Well, we're now joined by Hameed Hakimi, a former advisor to the Afghan Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Kabul, who's now a research associate at the think tank Chatham House. Thanks very much for coming in. We'll talk a little bit about the Afghan-US relations in a second. I first wanted to just chisel down a little bit on the actual vote. Now, for years, I remember being in Kabul and there was ballot stuffing and there were fake cards. We've got this biometric voter registration system. Can we trust this ballot?
It's certainly seen as an improvement to where you just referenced. But obviously, Afghanistan is a country that is not just exercising democracy as a new phenomenon, but the idea of literacy with these systems and capacity to run these particular administrative and management of such big undertakings, I think that's still holding. It's in building. I think the other element that we have to remember is that just a few weeks ago, there was a lot of doubt whether this election would go ahead indeed because of the dialogue with the Taliban.
And it has been delayed many times.
It was delayed twice, and with the exception of President Ghani's, the incumbent president's camp that kept going at the campaigns, actually one of the main tickets gave up campaigning altogether because they thought there would be some kind of a deal with the Taliban and the Americans, and what's the point of this election at the end? So we are where we are because of the background, the tweets of President Trump and all that. But I think given that this is a step ahead, that people wanted, all the parties involved in this elections wanted something that would be better functionally than that ballot stuffing business. Biometric is definitely a step ahead, but there were issues with it today.
Yeah.
And I think the bigger issue was a lower voter turnout, which I think will be the key challenge.
But do you think that's got something to do with the fact that you've got Ashraf Ghani who's saying, I want a clear mandate. There has to be a clear mandate or it's very difficult to govern. And obviously there's been this partnership going on. Do you think that we're likely to see that? Or are we going to be in a similar position that low voter turnout and the vote doesn't really make any difference?
I think that the understanding, I mean, I'm working in the policy advice side of this as a researcher, an independent researcher. I speak to lots of people, many stakeholders, and I think there is an overall feeling, including from the internationals, that Afghanistan needs a single president, that this national unity government seemed like a crisis management thing that just happened at the time, and then nobody really thought about beyond that point. And I think both Ashraf Ghani and Abdullah as the frontrunners, as we see them, have clearly said many, many times they do not want the same arrangements again. So they clearly want to be a one-man president without having one of their hands tied, as they constantly reference. Alan
Fisher there was, in his report, was talking about the US-Afghan relations. And, of course, it was President Trump that said that's the end of the peace talks. Is there likely to be an impact on how we move forward with who wins here? Because in the end, the Taliban have always said, well, it's a puppet administration we don't recognise, we only talk to the Americans. But do you think that if there was a different person to Ashraf Ghani, it would make any difference?
I mean, it's very difficult to say that, first of all, because the dialogue between the Taliban and the Afghans officially never took place. So we didn't really get to see the dynamics of personalities. But it's certainly true that with the national unity government, there was always a tension about, who gets to be appointed as this negotiating team by the Afghan government. So whoever comes in, if they have a clear mandate and they don't have to constantly do overtures to the other party within the government, then you could possibly see a bit more clarity. I think with the Americans as well, they will probably be able to manage the Afghan government relationship a bit better. So I hope that there is a clear winner, that we don't go into a crisis mode that we did last time, because I think my bigger worry is not even the voter turnout, is the fact that what if there's a dispute? Who's going to mediate? We haven't really talked about that. There's not been much talk on who really is an acceptable mediator. And I don't expect President Trump's administration to behave in the same way that President Obama's administration did, because a lot of equations are not there anymore. But hopefully, Afghans have come out. We have to remember this is about a country of over 35 million people, resilient people, and I think they deserve a lot better.
And they've risked coming out of it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us. Hameed Hakimi, thanks very much for coming in.